It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Saunders. Alan, what's going on?
Another sunny day. Oh, I'm knocking myself over. Another sunny day. Another afternoon drive. Although I'm going to be parked for this one because I don't have my fancy, little holder thing.
Different setup that we got going on. I can tell behind you. You just mentioned to me right before we start recording, met your nephew for the first time. That's awesome. Congratulations. Glad everybody's healthy as well. But yeah, another day where we touched 60 here, Alan, today. Again, what's going on?
It's a beautiful thing.
But it's just like there was no in between, right? Like there was no grace.
The dam burst.
It was just immediately.
The dam burst.
Yeah. But anyway, we don't even need to. Let's just jump right into it. Ton of news coming out today. Honestly, I feel like we should build up to the bigger ones to talk about here. The first one that I want to bring up to you, obviously, talked about the quarterback stuff. Gardner Minshew getting released. A name at all in your mind to keep an eye on for the Steelers if there's an outside option or no?
No. I really think, Lan, if there's an outside option, like Daniel Jones is the only one that I feel like is realistic.
And is that because of, like, you're not saying Aaron Rodgers in there, you're not saying Sam Darnold, that because of the price tags for those two, or just the fit of Rodgers and maybe not the price tag like Darnold?
I don't think they would be trying to sign Justin Fields if they wanted one of those guys. And I feel like Daniel Jones is like a plan D kind of option. But like, should something happen, like that feels realistic. I don't think there's anybody out there that the Steelers want more than they want Justin Fields.
Yeah. Including Russell Wilson.
Yes. And there probably isn't anybody out there that want more than Russell Wilson besides Justin Fields.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is kind of, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Just a few days away.
It's like, to me, it's like, I understand like the rationale, the fan rationale of like, I want to watch Justin Fields, like want to be able to hope on Justin Fields. But like, I feel like it is very much the human resources meme where it's like, I'm a league average quarterback, but it's like, I'm a league average quarterback. Ew, no. Like, it's like, somebody asked me, like, would NFL wide receivers, would the Steelers be more attractive to one or the other? It's like, to the rest of the world, this is just the same freaking guy with like old and young version. Like, that's it. I don't know. No, there will be no change in perspective or perception about the Steelers if they have Russell Wilson or Justin Fields to anyone other than the Steelers' own fan base, who will lose their minds if it's Russell Wilson.
Yeah, and honestly, like, because I'm somebody that certainly prefers Justin Fields, and I've mentioned this, like, in this, again, very short-sighted, probably a little bit irrational, but hey, part of being a fan. So for me, it's just the way that everything kind of collapsed last year. I can't get on board with running it back in the exact same way. And I understand Justin Fields is also on the roster, so to some extent you could say that is running it back too. But like, if you're bringing back pretty much the entire offensive coaching staff and everything like that, you run it back with a lot of the same pieces. I understand there's got to be change just because there's going to be turnover every year. They want to improve that side of the football from a roster standpoint. It's just hard for me to get on board with bringing the same quarterback back. That's just where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. You're bringing the same quarterback back, whether it's the same guy or not, probably.
Sure.
Like, not likely to get better quarterback play.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, again, this is, pretty short-sighted here, but more exciting to watch, Justin, I think, because of the higher highs with his legs.
I think there's definitely higher upside. I mean, there's no question about that. The question is just, he's 26. He's had that higher upside for a long time.
That's what we've been talking about.
Why should we feel really good about it happening this year?
Right. And I wouldn't, like, it's not like I'm expecting him to all of a sudden be the answer long term for them, even if he does come back this year. But okay. Anyways, actually a couple Seattle receivers to talk about. The first one we'll talk about, Tyler Lockett being released. And again, I think that Russell Wilson kind of comes into this conversation too. Because whether it's Tyler Lockett or the one that we can talk about here a little bit more higher price, probably. Do you think that again, you talked about the quarterback, like either way, receivers are going to look at it. But when you have a rapport like Russell Wilson did with those guys, if he is the guy that does come back, more likely that a guy like that is attracted to coming here.
Yeah, I would say that is the one difference. Where if you're talking about like people having personal relationships, there's some stylistic differences too. Like I just don't think in general, like the average NFL wide receiver is going to feel differently about one of those guys than the other. I also think there's an overwhelmingly large chance that one of those two guys is signed very shortly. So like it's going to be one of those two, and I don't think it really matters, and it's going to get done, and it is what it is. So like I think. And to be clear, I think Fields is the better. I would pick Fields, but like I just don't think it really matters. In terms of the like attracting wide receiver part of the conversation. So, but like Tyler Lockett, yeah, you're going to do a lot better job attracting Tyler Lockett if you have Russell Wilson than you are if you have Justin Fields, a guy you played with for 7 years, has a long relationship with. Also, just feel like older guys, like sort of congregating with other older guys, feels a bit natural as well. So yeah, I mean, if you want Tyler Lockett, you should probably pick Russell Wilson. Not that I think
Uh,
Tyler Lockett is good enough to dictate the decision of
Well,
the quarterback
that's
position.
where I was going to go next is like, okay, from Tyler Lockett's side, maybe it's more attractive, but should the Steelers be looking at a player like Tyler Lockett at this point in his career when you look at what they need within obviously, first things first, they just need more talented people in that receiver room. But like stylistically, does Tyler Lockett make sense at this point in his career and what he offers at this point?
Well, he does make some sense, like just in terms of like he is more talented than what they have. And he did play more outside last year than he has his entire career. Is the most outside receiver he played in his entire career was last year. So he's
Mhm.
not just a slot guy. Um, I just think there's a lot of duplication of the skill sets of him and Roman Wilson. I guess it depends on how you feel about Roman Wilson. If you feel like last year was a blip, that he's going to come back and be an important part of this offense, then I don't think you need Tyler Lockett. If you're seriously concerned about the idea of Roman Wilson not panning out, then I think maybe you can decide to do something like go with Tyler Lockett instead.
How do you feel about Roman Wilson? And not any like based off anything like last year or anything like that, but when he was coming out of the draft, the way that you projected him.
Yeah, I think he was like interesting. I like the player. He's not, it's a weird pick because like not a high upside pick. I think he will probably always be limited to being like kind of like a number 3 or like a 2B kind of a receiver. It's probably mostly going to have to play out of the slot. But I really like the way he does those things. I love his passion. I love his toughness. I love his physicality, his blocking. Like I didn't think he was far from being a good player last year. But he was not a good player last year, even before he got hurt. And then he got hurt, got behind. I think the like didn't know the playbook thing has like been overblown a little bit. Nobody who hasn't practiced knows the playbook. Like it's not like it's like some indictment of his character. Give me a rookie that has had 3 practices as of January 4th and then throw them out there and let me know how they're going to go. It's going to be terrible. Like yeah, I don't think it means like he wasn't trying hard enough or anything like that. It's just that's the
Mhm.
way it is.
And we saw Calvin Austin, oddly enough, a player who, like, role wise, you could say, obviously fighting hand in hand with Roman Wilson, miss his rookie year and then have to kind of bounce back after losing that. Is that kind of what we should be looking for in terms of a trajectory? Obviously, Roman Wilson went a little bit earlier than Calvin Austin did as a draft pick. But like, is that kind of your expectation in terms of the build up? Should he, and obviously the way they built this receiver room could dictate a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, exactly that. Like you could put yourself in a situation where you need Roman Wilson to be pretty good this year. Like you could just, not do very much and like add one guy and say, okay, Roman's going to be our addition. But like, I don't think that's a good idea. Um, And so I don't know. We'll see. They'll tell us a lot about how they feel about Roman Wilson by what all they do to this wide receiver room. If there's another slot option, it's probably a bad sign for him.
Let's talk about a guy that could definitely play in the slot, and then we'll come back to the other Seattle receiver because I feel like that's the last one that we should talk about. But Christian Kirk also going to be granted his release from the Jacksonville Jaguars. We had talked, was it just last week? We played that clip talking about Christian Kirk where it seemed like, maybe they won't because he could have their new GM could have stayed down the middle, James Gladstone, but it kind of seemed like he was very supportive of the idea of Christian Kirk staying there. But now it comes out that he's going to be released. Steelers tried to trade for him last year. If he doesn't break his collarbone, might not be having this conversation because he might already be a Pittsburgh Steeler. What do we make of Christian Kirk now? I assume, just like me, you feel like there's going to be reignited interest from the Steelers in him.
Well, let this be a lesson for Jacksonville's 9-year-old general manager that if you're going to cut a player before free agency anyway, when you go to the combine, you should tell everyone you want to trade him so that maybe a trade market does
Yeah.
develop instead of just lying and then cutting him. Like, not that I'm sure, like, I think it's possible that somebody would have traded for Christian Kirk. Maybe not likely, but possible. Kept that one real close to the vest. I think that was a mistake. But, he has a long time to learn. He's probably going to be GM for another 50, 60 years. So this is the Steelers' number one option in terms of what they're going to be looking to do at wide receiver, I believe. They wanted him last year. If he hadn't broken his collarbone, I believe he would have been a Steeler at the trade deadline. And how about that for like a what if, kind of like, how does does the season collapse happen if the Steelers are able to pull that trade off instead of just landing Williams? I don't know. It's possible. Like that's a series of unfortunate events for the Steelers last year at the receiver position, and that was certainly one of them. We know there's been interest. It seems to just make way too much sense.
Yeah. I mean, I've already going back to last year. We obviously knew the interest that was there. I've already heard, that he's certainly going to be one to circle when free agency first opens up. What do you think makes it about him so attractive from the Steelers side? Like, why did they want him last year, and why would they want him now? Given that the reason I wanted to talk about him first was just because we were just talking about guys that play in the slot. Christian Kirk not only plays most of his snaps in the slot over the duration of his career, but also his best work done in the slot.
Yeah, I think he's the guy that can play both. I think he's really that true replacement for Deontay Johnson in that he's a separator, which is something the Steelers have not had since then.
Sure.
I think he's a good complement to George Pickens. They have different skill sets. They do different things. So, I think it's a really good fit. And I don't think he'll be that expensive. I think he'll be, you know, in the tens of millions, but I don't think he's going to break the bank.
Okay. Speaking of breaking the bank, where I want to go to next, DK Metcalf requesting a trade from the Seattle
I thought
Seahawks.
this was going to be Maxx Crosby. All right.
Requesting a trade from the Seattle Seahawks, who are already releasing Tyler Lockett. So Jackson Smith and Jigba right now is like the Will Smith meme at the end of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in the Seattle Seahawks wide receiver room. DK Metcalf, talked about him last year. Like, the Steelers called, the Seahawks didn't seem interested in moving him. They obviously didn't move him then. It seems like the way that it was reported this year, maybe more open to it now, 1 year remaining on his contract. What do we make of this? I actually was already told that the Steelers have at least called regarding this year again. So what do we make of this, and do you think this is plausible?
I don't know. I'm having a hard time gauging how motivated the Seahawks are to get this done and how motivated DK is to make a mess if he needs to get out of there. It's one thing to ask for a trade. Hey, we weren't very good last year. Looks like it might be worse this year. If you could find a good landing spot for me, I'd like to go. It's different to be like, if you don't trade me, I am going to Jane Lynch meme here. You're going to create an environment that is so toxic, right?
Yeah.
There's a very big difference between those two things. There's also, from the Seahawks perspective, a very big difference between, yeah, okay, you want to trade, all right, we'll see what's out there, and also yeah, we got to get rid of this guy.
Right.
I don't know
exploring
that
trade options doesn't mean they're 100% trading them.
Right. Yeah. And there was a report last week from the reporter in Seattle, and now I can't remember his name, does a good job out there for Emerald Spectrum, who reported they've been talking to the Packers about a first plus one of their young wide receivers, a Wicks or a Dobbs. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I think DK is worth that, but that's at the top of the, this is not sounding like a motivated seller. Like, this is sounding like someone who, if we're going to make this trade, we're getting a haul for him.
Yeah, Corbin Smith, I believe who you're talking about in terms of the Seattle reporting from that side. Yeah, I mean, the Green Bay thing last week certainly made me think, okay, maybe this guy's out there. But again, like at that price, that would certainly be like that's the starting point for that. Are they going to get that? Then you see like Mike Florio was on 93.7 talking about like maybe it's a third or fourth round pick. If it's a third or fourth round pick, like that they would be willing to take, that deal's done. Like how many teams do you think are already offering third or fourth round picks to Seattle for DK Metcalf right now? Like,
Yeah, I mean, he's worth easily that. I don't even think that the first and like a young receiver is a bad deal. I don't know that it would be I don't think it's a good deal for the Steelers in the situation they're in right now. But like, if you're the Buffalo Bills,
also
I'd
talked
take
about
that.
today, I
I'd
saw
take
somebody
that.
Ben Volin or Wallet, whatever, however that's pronounced, the
Yeah.
NFL reporter, said that for him, they're the team to watch in these sweepstakes. Just because, like you just mentioned, makes the most sense. Obviously, they know they're right there. They're still trying to figure out how to get over that hump that is the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, I mean, not that I like that. I like the fit. I obviously hate it because it's not my team and they're in the AFC, but I like the fit.
Yeah. And so I think when you look at this, it's hard for me to imagine the Steelers being the top bidder with a price that, the way things stand right now,
Mm-hmm.
Seattle would accept. I can see the Steelers being the top bidder and be like, hey, nobody else really wants to play in this game. The Steelers are offering second and a fifth. You know, we're just going to keep him. I can see that. I can see the
Mm-hmm.
Steelers getting there and beating everyone else, but it's hard to see both of those things happening for me where I stand right now. Maybe more will come out about this, about the relationship being toxic, and maybe DK will provide some insight as to why he's asking for a trade, which I think would
Yeah.
help get in his head a little bit about how he's going to approach this. Um, there was a report from, I believe it was Schefter, that said he wants to play for a contender. So that does kind of limit the potential field a little bit. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think the Steelers would love to have DK Metcalf. As we stand here right now, I'm having a hard time seeing how this deal gets across the goal line for the Steelers.
And like immediately after, Russell Wilson posts on his Instagram story a picture with his wife Sierra, DK Metcalf, and then DK Metcalf's girlfriend, fiance, wife, whatever. And that obviously sparked conversation. So going back to the whole Russ thing, DK Metcalf and him obviously have a great relationship. Could Russ being on the roster as opposed to not being on the roster make a difference there for a guy that is under contract? Like, how much leverage do you think DK Metcalf could have, and what his next landing spot is?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on, again, how this goes. Right now, none. It hasn't been reported that they've given him permission to talk to other teams, that other than wanting to play for a contender, he has a specific set of demands. The Seahawks can trade him anywhere. Now, an
Mm-hmm.
acquiring team is probably going to want to have some idea about what the contract demands are going forward. He's entering the last year of his contract, due $18 million this year. So, like, I don't know. We'll see where this goes. But like, I mean, they could bring Russ back, and I think DK is a really good receiver for us, not just because they played together before, because he has that down the field, go ball, contested catch ability that really lines up with Russ's skill set. I mean, I think I said this on Twitter. It's like, if you're gonna trade for DK Metcalf, you might want to have Russell Wilson. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they fit together. Those pieces fit together nicely, even if you like Justin Fields more.
The other receiver that keeps coming back in the trade market too, Cortland Sutton. Same thing could be said about Russ there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cortland does more of the like scramble drill, kind of like come back to
Yeah.
me kind of stuff that like does fit with Fields a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, anybody
Well,
that's going to
so
be
yeah,
trying,
the rapport, and they still have a good relationship. Like despite how things went
yeah,
for Denver and for Russ.
yeah, I
Yeah,
agree with
they
the rapport part. I think
yeah.
X's and O's wise, I think Sutton probably fits Fields just as well, but not Metcalf. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing with Metcalf is going to be throwing deep balls and back shoulder fades, and Russ is way better at that than Fields is.
From a like domino perspective, walk with me here for a second, Alan. Let's say hypothetically the team is able to acquire DK Metcalf in a trade. You would assume that they want to. I don't know what they would be paying, but they probably wouldn't want to use him as their own rental. I'd assume like DK part of this is wanting to get a new contract
Yeah,
anyway.
you
So
got to sign him
the
to a new
Steelers.
contract if you trade for him. Yeah.
So say that we get there, that happens. What's the fallout of that for a guy like George Pickens? Is he going like we don't know how he's going to react, obviously, but again, this would be even more so than like the scenario I brought up where it's just him not getting an extension, and then how does he react this summer? Now imagine another receiver gets brought in and he sees them get an extension, where things go from there.
Yeah, man. Like, can you imagine the Steelers fan base if like these three pieces of news hit like within like an hour? It's like Steelers trade for DK Metcalf. Steelers re-sign Russell Wilson. The Steelers are trading George Pickens.
Yep.
Like it would just be it would be entertaining to watch. Like I don't
The
think
highs
that's
and lows.
yeah, I don't know that that's likely, but I mean, I think trading for a guy like DK Metcalf, whether it's a trade or whether it's just playing out the end of the year, that's the writing on the wall. That's the end of the road for George Pickens with the Steelers. Yeah. And then what is that gonna what kind of reaction is that gonna cause? I don't have any idea.
Yeah, and you assume that this would all happen before the draft. So then I guess the question comes into the Steelers' mind. They have to decide internally how they feel like it's going to play out. Because do you feel like you can get by this year with having George on the roster and be able to like keep him in check? Or if you think things are going to go south and in the summer he's going to cause an issue and you trade him anyway, does it make more sense to trade him before the draft to have the extra capital then? Like that's going to be a calculation they have to make, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like you get to a point in the draft where you're like, oh, it's the middle of the third round, and Jaden Higgins is on the board, and we can trade George Pickens for this pick and draft Jaden Higgins. It's like, okay, I would do that. Like, like it just depends. It depends on what's out there, how fast the wide receivers go, what the market is going to be like. I mean, I don't think the Steelers would be. I reported the other day the Steelers are not actively shopping him right now, but I don't
Mhm.
think that means that they would be afraid of making a deal either if one came their way.
Yeah. So I laid out a scenario where there's a possible extension coming for the Steelers this summer. One that we fully expect to take place is the TJ Watt extension. And maybe we saw that price go up a little bit. And that's kind of where I want to start with this for you. Maxx Crosby getting his new extension with the Las Vegas Raiders. A massive extension. First off, is $35.5 million per, kind of the number you thought that would come in at for Maxx Crosby. What does that do for TJ Watt's market?
I'm not really surprised by that. It is the highest paid. I'm not surprised by any of it. I'm not surprised he signed first because I think TJ and Garrett are going to come in on top of that, and Parsons if he signs this offseason as well. So you
Mhm.
get to be the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history for like 3 weeks if you're if you're Maxx Crosby
Yeah.
until someone of those other guys signs. Honestly, don't like not. I think that's about where I expected him to be. I think TJ will be
Okay.
37, 38. I think Garrett and Parsons will be in the 40 range. I kind of feel like that's where they belong.
And so did nothing about this deal changed for you then? Because I see a lot of people saying like, the price went up and everything for TJ. And I'm like, this is kind of the number I expected him to
Yeah,
be
I
at.
mean it I was kind of already baking this in. Like it would if it was a surprisingly high amount. Like the Barkley deal we talked about yesterday. I don't think anybody saw that coming. I don't think anybody predicted
No.
that
Yeah.
Saquon was going to take the top off the running back market this offseason. I think everybody expected those four guys were all going to sign for more than everybody had ever signed before at that position. And it's just a question where they were going to slot in. And that's about where I figured he was going to be. So to me, it doesn't really change much. I expect TJ to sign like, somewhere in the neighborhood of like, I don't know, 3-year extension at 37.5 million per, something like that. I mean, that's kind of what I'm figuring.
We talked about this briefly when we touched on the TJ extension about like, how it got to the point where it did the last extension that he signed, where it was like, the weekend before the opener, before he finally signed his deal. You mentioned before that you didn't think it was going to be as contentious, but like right now, have you heard any, like, is there any type of timeline for this? Do you think that they just want to get through free agency and potentially even the draft first, or where are we at?
My understanding is the Steelers are approaching this offseason like most, where they will deal with those issues in the summer. That you're not going to talk about contract extensions until then.
Okay, and that's really the only. I mean, well, we know Jalen Warren obviously an RFA, but I've
That's
mentioned
the
this, and this is
exception because there's an inflection point here coming up where they have to do something. But yeah,
yeah. From like an extension perspective, I've thrown this out there, and I don't necessarily think that it's likely, but like, do you think that there's any thought about a Deshaun Elliott extension? Who signed a 2-year deal, has 1 year left?
I don't know. I think there should be. I think it was outstanding, but we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I have
I
no
would.
idea. Just because from his perspective, like coming off the year that he did, I'm curious to see what they would pay. But at the same time, imagine if you could replicate that again and then hit the open market. Like I don't know. I could see certainly both sides of that coin.
The
Um,
Steelers haven't usually extended guys that are kind of like non-star players like that, but I think he's someone that it's worth doing.
yeah, absolutely. Alan, was there any other news stuff today? I did get a DM that I wanted to bring up on here.
Sam
Was it,
Hubbard retired.
Sam Hubbard did retire after 8 seasons? I think
29
in
years
the
old.
yeah.
What a life. Retire at 29. That sounds fantastic, doesn't
And
it?
it seemed honestly how much of it was just motivated by not wanting to play. Like, it seemed like it was just all about wanting to just be like a one helmet guy. Like Cincinnati wanted to move on,
And the
and
injuries. He's been injured a bunch, so I think that was part of it too.
yeah. Anything else?
No, I don't think so. We did have some questions, I think.
Well, okay, so I got this DM, and this is I wanted to bring this up. There's a question baked in here, but we got to send some good vibes to Matt here, who's a daily listener of the show. Hey man, been listening to you and Alan since the beginning. You guys mean a lot to me as a fan. Just wanted to reach out to let you know the situation I have going on during this free agency period. Set to have open heart surgery on March 12th. I'm 34 years old, gonna be okay and everything. Unique context to this is that I'm literally set to be coming out of anesthesia right at 4 p.m., the exact timing of free agency starting. Now, I could parlay this into a question for the pod. What is the best worst case scenario that you can think of that I'll be waking up to and checking my phone from? Will I be asking for more anesthesia once I check my notifications, or will I be making a big fist pump, make the biggest fist pump as possible? Whether you take the question, we did for the pod or not, just wanted to reach out to someone that could appreciate this wild situation. Thanks. Aside from this all, I have a really tough recovery upcoming. You guys are going to be a big part of that as a daily listener. Appreciate you both.
Oh man, that's awesome, Matt. Thanks for the question, and we're wishing you all the best in your recovery here. It's scary stuff. That's funny though. 4 o'clock is on Wednesday, which is the start of the new league year. I think
Yeah, we'll already have.
the
Yeah.
contact period starts on Monday at noon, though, right? I'm pretty sure. I
Yep.
think the
Yeah, we're gonna
contact.
know
So we'll
a
know
lot of
most
stuff
of what's
before.
gonna happen Monday and Tuesday. So you're not gonna be in for any big surprises Wednesday afternoon. Um, Best and worst case scenario. That's interesting.
I think best case scenario, the box that they need to check for me in free agency is getting one of these bigger name corners. I think that should happen like minutes within the tampering period.
Yeah,
I would
like
like the Steelers
what's the worst case scenario you can imagine a corner? Like I can't envision a particularly bad worst case scenario there.
bring back Dante Jackson.
Like that's not even like
Just
that bad. Like
no. But given what's on the market, I think that could be viewed as such.
yeah, I guess, but like
Mhm.
yeah, I mean,
You know what it is too, though. Here and again, this
if they
is
bring back Dante Jackson and they also sign Nate Hobbs, I'm totally fine with that.
well. Here's why. Like that 100% rational thought, which is why it's doesn't work for me, brother. Um, we just saw it last year. Like, and we do not want to go through the same thing, even if it would be fine. We cannot have that
He was
turnover.
injured the second half of the year. I think he was really good in the
Mhm.
first half. I got no problem with Dante Jackson coming back if it's cheap. I guess to me the worst case scenario is you misread the market and you overpay. I feel like that's the worst case scenario. Is that like 5 minutes into free agency, the Pittsburgh Steelers have signed I don't know, we'll say
Well, okay,
Shavarius
let's
Ward,
say
signed Shavarius Ward to a 5-year contract worth $22 million a season. And then like nobody else signs the rest of that day. And the next day Rasul Douglas signs for like 2 years, $8 million. Right? Like that's
yeah,
probably the
but
worst case
see,
scenario.
on immediately when that happens, though, that would not age well But immediately when that happens, I don't think people were like upset about it until they see it play out.
Yeah.
So like he's not going to have that coming out of anesthesia.
Yeah, but that's like the worst case scenario I can imagine at corner. It's just that you misread the market and you overpay. Wide receiver, the worst case scenario is Darius Slayton signs somewhere else right away. Christian Kirk, I don't know what. Like there's less guys, so you can envision them not getting one.
I think I'll be more surprised if they don't sign Christian Kirk.
Like, I agree.
Legitimately, that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah.
What about at quarterback? If they don't sign, if they somehow, like, we fully expect one of their two is going to be signed, but if that doesn't happen, but but worst case scenario, say it doesn't.
I'm not even sure I'm willing to entertain it as a worst case scenario. And really, how much worse is Danny Dimes if he's cheap? I don't know. Not that much worse.
Yeah. So okay,
like
that's who.
Like if it's $15 million a year for Russ or for Justin Fields, and you can get Daniel Jones for like $3 million, I think I might rather have Daniel Jones for $3 million. Like it's not a big difference.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree. You think about what else? How would you rather have Daniel Jones and who's like a $9 million player probably? Like somebody on like a defensive tackle before you get to the draft.
Hobbs might be about a $9 million player. Yeah, that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah. So would you rather have that or just Justin Fields?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
here's a bad one. You want a bad one?
Oh God.
The Seahawks trade DK Metcalf. The trade is for way less than everyone thinks it's going to be, and it's to the Baltimore Ravens.
I was wondering where that was coming. I was like, is it going to be to Baltimore?
Yeah. That one would be bad, right? It's like DK Metcalf traded for a 5th-round pick to Baltimore. Yeah, that would hurt. That would hurt.
5 minutes after the Bengals extend T. Higgins.
And then the Steelers sign like Tyler Lockett. Trade for Cooper Kupp. It's like the least invigorating. Because like you're saying, like it takes all the wind. Like if that happens first, no matter what the Steelers do, it's like just the opposite of the like, I'm waiting to see it play out. Like if that happens first, no matter what the Steelers do, it's going to look bad.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Anyways, this comes from Matt. We appreciate you, Matt. We're sending you all the good vibes as you go through that. Let's get some love in the comments as well for Matt, because I know that he'll be checking those. He's in there all the time. So, Alan, before we get out of here, tell the people they can find you.
Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now sites account. SteelersNow.com. Go there and read the word so I can get paid. Like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications on the YouTube platform. That's it.
There we go. And hit us in the comments, like I said, not just for love for Matt, but hit us with some questions, hit us some topics to discuss as we work through the off season here. If you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify,
Chris Carter tomorrow.
Podcast
Chris Carter on this very YouTube platform in a square right there where it says Afternoon Drive tomorrow.
See, okay, you should have told me that before, because we were just talking about worst case scenarios. No, I'm kidding. Love Chris. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you are listening somewhere else. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. You'll find us there. Find us everywhere else doing the same. Then you'll find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.